It's been an exciting year, and I think kids for a long time have wanted to really like boogie at concerts. I mean, there hasn't been a band for a long time that's actually gone out and done that. But I certainly really dig live concerts, you know. And they did all that Beatlemania stuff. It's been more exciting than possibly it's been for 5 or 6 years. You know, and I see my role in the rock industry anyway as being a person. You know, I don't think I'm a teen idol. We don't have any cigar-smoking dudes behind us. There's no big business people. You know, it's down to me, really, what happens. Music really gets me off. And for me, it's a very positive art form, you know. And as an artist, you know, I really enjoy it. You know, if other people like it, it's very flattering, you know. But meanwhile, I really do it for myself. We started out as an underground band, supposedly, or a minority band. And we've become like the biggest media band for like 5 years or something. Which for me is really weird, because many people used to say, you know, Mark, with your funny little voice, man, you know, you're never going to sell any records. So that was a strange one, you know. And every time you go on a stage, I don't presume it's going to be amazing, you know. I have to make it a good performance. I've had so many people to look at and learn how to reach people in the quickest way, which is what it's about. I mean, success is only relevant if it's pleasing to you. You know, to be successful and have #1 records, if it's nothing to do with you, is probably the quickest way to the madhouse. I can't think of any quicker way to freak out, you know. I'm quite prepared to be a dustman tomorrow if I have to be, you know. It's not relevant. It's not even important. What's important is that even if that happens, see, I know that I'd go out and I'd press my own records with a hand presser, you know, and go and give them to people.
Up until the autumn of 1971, June Feld had looked after all of Marc's business affairs. They both knew that if a future was to remain secure, they needed assistance. Tony Secunda was drafted in to set up Marc's own label deal in England, the T-Rex Wax Co. And he was there to negotiate with the Americans.
I needed him. But I needed him for about 6 months. I needed him to do a Warner's Brother deal for me that I didn't have the clout to do. And that's what I did, and everybody in the world said, "Oh, June, don't do it. You'll never get free of him. Don't touch him with a barge pole." And I said, I want him. I need him. Marc and I need him. I need him for Marc. And I got him, because Tony thought he was in there, both feet, for life. But he wasn't.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Telegram Sam crashed into the charts at #3. The following week, it became Marc's third #1.
first time I really got into Marc Bolan was when I saw him on Top Pot's doing Metal Guru. That was when I really kind of went for it. But previous to that, my older brother Richard always had lots of Marc Bolan records, really early records, and a lot of David Bowie records, and I used to go in there and listen to him when he was out. And if he ever caught me, I used to get sort of hit, you know. So it was kind of like a lead. My brother sort of led me onto it in a sense, you know. He used to play all those records. And I really got into lyrics around that time. And I used to love records that had lyrics. So, you know, any of the Marc Bolan albums that had lyrics, I used to kind of sit and read them and kind of imagine what the songs were about, kind of lose myself in them,
The slickest pop song of all time as far as Bolan was concerned, Metal Guru, with a twist of irony, was Marc's fourth and final #1. At the height of his popularity, Marc Bolan talked to Russell Harty.
Let's jump the generation gap and greet Marc Bolan. They're obviously lifting you up. I've been reading recently, Marc, in a newspaper, an article which suggests that you are the successor to the Beatles. That you, in fact, claim that you're a successor to the Beatles.
I never said that.
You didn't say that?
No way. You continue, and I'll fill in. Go on, please.
Do you have in your mind any intention?
They said that.
They said that, OK. Now, how does it strike you, then? That clearly you have views and ideas about that.
Well, people, let me say, just people with... When anyone does anything, they seem to give you a reason. Right, you know, you're doing this show, and at some point they're going to say that you're like, I don't know, Parkinson or Andrews. You know, it's like they do something on you, and it's... we sold a lot of records, which I'm very grateful for, and it's very sweet and everything. It's really nice, and we do what we do, but we're not... I mean, the Beatles were one thing, like the Rolling Stones were another. We are something else, really.
Well, all right, so we all know what the Beatles were, and we all some of us know what the Rolling Stones...
Yeah, they turn it into... They want to pigeonhole you into something that is not necessarily what you do. I'm sort of a cross between a lot of people, media-wise, being that the first person that really turned me on to things. I'm moving a lot, I'm sorry.
No, move to your heart's extent. Move around, whiz around. As long as you don't knock the mics, you can whiz anywhere. Yeah.
Like really with when I decided what I was going to do was Bob Dylan, because I realised that I started as a poet. I used to write when I was about 9. And I realised that if I use what really moved me as a human being, which is rock and roll, not pop music, because that is too wide, the gap, rock and roll, and I put the words that I felt very deeply inside me, that it would be all right. And he was successful at that, and I figured I might be.
Getting back to this dreaded article, which clearly is going down like a lead balloon with you, I want to quote you a bit, which says, for the first time in pop history, we have a superstar projecting not sex, but romance. Sex is a part of it,
but... Lord Byron, wasn't it? Wasn't
it? Could well have been Lord Byron, yes. Sex is a part of it, it says, but it's sex by courtesy of the Magic Prince, and I presume that means you, who is going to deflower the young virgin in an atmosphere of blissful romance.
That's I like that.
What does all that mean?
I don't know. I think what they're trying to imply is that, I don't know, the appeal of what I'm supposed to be to that thing is like a teenage crush thing.
It makes you out there as a kind of wistful, magical, distant...
You know better, though, right? I can't walk down the street anymore, right? So I employ people around me to make sure that no one really doesn't. I had to move because I couldn't stay at home for hundreds of kids outside.
Well, they were breaking the place up with it.
Well, they didn't mean they just write all over the wall. It's a hang-up for the neighbours.
You couldn't even go to the corner shop if you'd run out of salt. You couldn't actually think, oh, I'll pop up the shop. And so you had to phone, and somebody went and got you salt and brought it into the house. All those basic things, and like your cleaner that used to be your cleaner that you'd had from the year dot would suddenly come with her daughter and her daughter's friend, and they'd all come and want autographs, and so she wouldn't be doing the hoovering, she'd be sort of sorting out all the bits for the kids and things like that.
The last year for me has been very weird because I did what those people did, and I now do what I do now. I'd never believed in security, and I still don't. I feel I do what I do to people that want to listen. If they don't want to listen, crap them. I don't care, right? I do it because I believe in it, and I'm giving everything I can. And you get to a point, it's very proud, and you do it, and if people boo at you, I mean, I'm really rascal, and it's like, you do it, and that's what I do it for. What I get back is incidental.
He loved it. I mean, he thrived on it. It was a culmination of what he spent all those years trying to do. And initially, it was very exciting. He loved all those screaming fans. Later, it got very difficult because he suddenly realised that they weren't listening to his music, to the things that he'd written, because he's basically a poet. That's where he was. He wrote words, very beautiful words, that he put to music. He didn't write music and then put words to them. So he then, after, I don't know, 2.5 years of screamers, and they still were all screaming, he used to come home and say, but they didn't really hear the song. And they'd all whack up the volume, and you get Steve on bass, and it would be up at number 10, and Mark's guitar, it didn't have 12 on the knob, but had it, it would have been up at 12, and the drums were turned up, and so they just played louder and louder to overcome the audience reaction.
In July, the long-awaited album The Slider was released. Selling over 100,000 copies in one day, it was a mixture of self-analysis and pure rock and roll. Contained within was the beautiful Spaceball Ricochet.
How can I live when all I do is play the Spaceball Ricochet?
Spaceball Ricochet is a wonderful story, and it came as a title. It didn't come as a song initially. A little boy, when we lived in Clarendon Gardens, we lived on the upstairs of the house. We had the 2 floors. In the basement of the next house was a housing trust, and a little boy lived there with his mum. It was a one-parent family, which there weren't that many of in those days. And his father was black, and his mother was white, so he was this most beautiful child, golden brown, but with white blonde hair, curly hair. And he really got on well with Marc, because Marc had curly hair, and so they were like sort of positive and negatives. Wonderful. And he was called Anton. And one day he came in, and his mum had obviously gone up and got her dole money and arrows and things, and she went to Woolworths and bought him a pair of baseball boots. Nowadays they're called Converse, and children spend £45 on a pair. These were 19 and 11 in old proper money, in real terms. And he was so proud of them. And he had little, like, tatty old shorts on and a T-shirt and these gleaming baseball boots. And he came and bashed on the door, and, Marc! And Marc, I went down and let him in, and he whizzed up the stairs, haired up the stairs, he leapt up the stairs. And he said, look what I've got, Marc, look what my mum just got me. I've got spaceball boots. And he proceeded to run across the drawing room, up the wall, like 2 or 3 steps, and he ricocheted off that wall, whizzed up to the other side, and ricocheted off the back. And he said, and he was just whizzing backwards and forwards, and Marc went, oh, Spaceball Ricochet, and he wrote the title down. And then Anton, they had cup of tea and, you know, played records and hung out, and then Anton went home for his tea. And then Marc was gone, and he was upstairs, and that's how it came about. And lots of people think it's autobiographical, and it is, but it started off from Anton, who was a little boy with his new Spaceball boots.
I said I love a girl. She's a jingly singer, she's a seed to beat it out like me. Yeah. I said how can I live when all I do is play the Spaceball Ricochet? The Spaceball Ricochet. Oh baby, Spaceball. Do the Spaceball. Do the Spaceball, baby.
Bolan was beginning to have to look over his shoulder. Many fine bands emerged to threaten Marc's supremacy. Bowie, Gary Glitter, The Sweet and Slade were all competitors, or were they rivals?
Bolan was a success before we were. We very much admired him at that time. And I remember going to a press reception where Bolan and Mickey Finn come walking in. I mean, they did look stars, and we were all standing around. And we hadn't really had our first hit yet. In fact, we may have had our first hit, but not our biggest. And Chas Chandler, our manager, that's the bass player out the Animals, said, you know, next year he'll be as big as him. And I said, well, we thought, no, it's mega Bolan, you know, a bit really big, you know. So the competition thing, as you were mentioning, was that the following year, it was more the point of avoiding each other's record releases. And it was healthy competition, because he knew when to put a record out, and the best time was when we didn't put one out, vice versa, you know, because similar people were buying them.
I never looked upon him as a rival because he'd already arrived. You know, we were new as far as having hits, etc. As far as the glam thing went, that was purely a product of Top of the Pops as far as we were concerned. Everyone was trying to get more outrageous than anyone else. So it just snowballed. It was a bit silly in some places, but it was fun at the time, I must admit.
He got this hair, this corkscrew hair and everything, and he was a very sort of attractive man, if you know what I mean. Come across really strong. Mickey Finn, everybody wanted to photograph those two, right? So you were always looking at people that were happening at the time. And I think how Bolan certainly affected me was, as respects the glam, was that at first we wore long coats, and then later Bolan started to wear like a little star, not a star, it was like a drop or something, just under his eye. I thought that was amazing, I did. And it was just twinkling. And it was such a clever touch. I mean, at that time, there's a lot of sort of Stardusty records and all sorts of things around, you know. But that affected me, and some of the sort of, not over-glam clothes, but tasteful in his sense. The coming from the hippie period, you know, the sort of adding things to it, you know, like crinkly, bright things and jackets and whatever. A combination of maybe silk trousers once he wore, I think, you know. But I used to clock him. I mean, the things you needed to.
He loved cameras. He really did. I think, you know, when we first started, we'd probably sit around for an hour or two and get to know each other. But then, as the relationship progressed, we'd do sessions that took 5 minutes because he was so good and we could just interpret what we wanted to do very quickly.
He did an interview in Melody Maker, and it was a Q&A situation, questions and answers. And the question would always used to be in black print, and the answer would be underneath. And it went something like, what do you think now you're making it? You know, he said, I think I'm just going to go on and on and on. Sounded like Maggie Thatcher, you know. And then it said, well, what about competition? And the answer was, what competition? And then the question was, Slade, for instance. And he said, no competition. Now, that irked me for years and years. And it was a private vendetta that we should outright him and out-record him. That vendetta was there because ultimately there was a huge respect